Life after life. Jan saw people floating through the air towards him. They were his deceased relatives. So, you have returned to your homeland, to your home.
Now we'll be together again. Your time on Earth is over.
Jan was surprised that Grandma and Grandpa looked so young, 30 years old at most. Although he didn't say anything, they knew his thoughts. Yes, grandson, the soul is not a body and has no age. We are eternally young here. The earthly body starts to look like the soul around age 18, or by age 32 for some. But even an infant has the soul of an adult person. Only the body and brain don't allow a baby to grow up right away. You can't be ill or handicapped here. The soul is always healthy, but we can take on any appearance if we want to. And so, Grandpa became an elderly, hunched-over man again, leaning on crutches, and then he coughed heavily and started laughing along with everyone else.
Now let's go to our house.
And they found themselves in Grandma's old hut, where Jan was still a child. Why do you live in such an old hut? That's what we're used to, though we could live anywhere, even in a palace or in the middle of the sea, whatever we can imagine. Grandma took out a bowl of small pies, and Jan, tasting them, remembered the taste long forgotten from his childhood. Taking a bite of the pie, Jan discovered the incredible properties of the local cuisine. It was as if he could feel his grandmother's state of mind from when she made these pies, and he was surprised by this discovery. He knew her emotions and thoughts. Noticing this, his grandmother offered him an apple.
Here, try this. It isn't materialized. It came from a native tree.
Not having a clue as to what could be the difference between an apple from subtle matter and an apple from an earthly tree, Jan took the piece of fruit. But when he bit into it, he immediately experienced the state of the apple, as if he could feel its feelings, its thoughts, and its attitude to life. He could also completely feel the tree it was growing on, its condition, its mood, and everything it was. He was astonished that he could obtain such knowledge from simple food. In fact, all objects in the subtle world seemed very alive, like in a fairy tale, and he could communicate with everything. Jan had experienced something similar when he had taken LSD. It was as if the world came alive and communicated with him. It was the same as when he was a child, when everything seemed animated and alive, when he talked with objects and the world, and they all seemed to respond.
Yes, everything is full of life, but a human living in civilization forgets this. And those people we used to call savages living in the wilderness retain that perception of life. Even young children wonder why what they imagine does not appear out of thin air. They retain this habit from their life in the subtle plane, where everything appears from what we imagine, from our thoughts. But adults discourage them from this perception, thinking that it is childish nonsense, that a child does not yet understand that it is impossible. Yet everything in the world is alive, nothing is dead. Only nature is alive in its own way, different from the way humans are. Civilization has deprived people of the ability to perceive. People have even gone so far as to not recognize that animals and women have souls. Because of this misperception, a lot of evil arises, and now there is destruction of the earth and each other. Priests had an election to determine whether women had souls. This speaks of their complete blindness, which was the root of the Inquisition fires and the Crusades. Although both Moses and Jesus told people, "Thou shalt not kill," people did not hear them and understood it in their own way, blessing wars and soldiers who went to the front to die for the sake of some ruler who was anxious for his place on the throne, and covered his desire for power with slogans about protecting the motherland and other patriotic lines. Even now, their fight against dissent continues. Remember what they did to the Master? They need slaves, but they don't have iron chains anymore. The chains have become informational. They have entangled the brain, and, drowning in information, one does not even see the chains and thinks one is free and informed. Dissent breaks these chains, and ignorant leaders are afraid of it. They try to make all dissenters look bad, to ruin their shining reputation, to turn the crowd against them in order to keep them in bondage, and destroy everything that could make them free.
Jan listened to his grandmother in amazement, bewildered by the change in her worldview. After all, she was an Orthodox Christian, always going to church and blaspheming all sects and people who thought differently. She did not want to hear new opinions or theories.
Yes, grandson. On Earth, almost everyone lives in total blindness, being in bondage to ideologies. But here we have our eyes open to the truth.
So what do you do here?
We rest, my dear. We watch how life is going on Earth, travel in time, and visit different worlds.
That's a great life. And what did we live on Earth for then? Why did we forget all this here? Why exist like this? Here we are at home, and Earth is a mission, something like a gym, where we go through the lessons given by God and get experience, which we don't have here. God bakes our soul like a pie, and not all stages of this process are pleasant, but they are necessary for our soul to develop, to become wise. Then I was wrong to kill myself. Many things in life are predetermined by God, and you are not guilty of it, nor is your suicide. But you could have lived differently if you had listened to Inna right away and started to develop spiritually. Then you could have followed another version of your destiny, and perhaps could have reached a higher level of being, where angels, gurus, and saints live in infinite bliss. Jan remembered the guru's class, Inna, longed for her, and immediately found himself at her side. The cartoon is based on the book Life After Life. Read Life After Life on the website amazon1.org/books. Receive more interesting practices, spiritual knowledge, and gifts on the websites of our partners. You will find details in the description.